She had everything the world could offer: wealth, comfort, and a future most could only dream of. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, the billionaire's daughter was given just 7 days to live. Doctors had no answers, her family had no hope, and time was slipping away. Her mother, desperate and broken, searched for a miracle in places she never thought she would. But miracles don't always come from where we expect. While those closest to her turned away in fear and helplessness, it was someone society often overlooked, a man dismissed because of the color of his skin, who stepped forward. What he did in those final days didn't just change a dying girl's fate, it shattered the walls of prejudice and forced a powerful mother to see a truth she had long ignored. Why would a man, burdened by injustice, choose compassion over bitterness? And how could one act of courage expose the deepest cracks in humanity? The mansion stood like a fortress of wealth, its marble floors gleaming under the soft glow of chandeliers. Behind its tall iron gates lived a family that seemed untouchable, their lives wrapped in luxury and privilege. Among them was a young girl, the billionaire's only daughter. She had been raised in comfort, shielded from the world's harshness, with every dream within her grasp. To those outside, her life looked perfect. But perfection can shatter in an instant. At just 17, she was given news no one is ever prepared to hear. Her body was failing, time was running out, and nothing her family's fortune could buy would stop it. The doctors delivered their verdict with cold certainty: 7 days. 7 days to breathe, to smile, to exist. For her mother, it felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Money, connections, influence, none of it mattered anymore. Inside those gates, silence replaced laughter. Every tick of the clock was a cruel reminder of what was slipping away. Her mother, dressed in designer gowns and known for her power, suddenly found herself powerless. She tried to bargain with fate, searched desperately for treatments, and even considered bribes to extend her daughter's fragile life. But nothing worked. And yet, within this family's shadowed grief, another story was unfolding. Outside the glittering halls, there were people who kept the estate running, the ones who were rarely noticed, whose names were barely remembered. Among them was a janitor, a quiet man who moved through the mansion's polished corridors unseen. He was there every morning before the family woke, every evening after they slept, scrubbing away the traces of their lives. His work was invisible, his presence tolerated but never respected. He carried more than just cleaning supplies. He carried the weight of being judged by his skin before he was ever seen for his humanity. He knew the sting of whispers, the sharp edges of prejudice, and the invisible line that divided him from the world he served. To the family, he was just the help. But to him, every day was survival, balancing dignity with the reality of being overlooked. As the girl's condition worsened, the household grew colder, fractured by despair. Staff whispered in corners, unsure of how long they would even have work if tragedy struck. Some left, unable to endure the tension that filled the mansion. But the janitor stayed. Day after day, he mopped the same floors, emptied the same bins, all while watching the family crumble under the weight of their own fear. What he saw in the daughter wasn't just illness. He saw loneliness. Behind her pale smile was a girl who had lived surrounded by people, yet never truly seen beyond the shadow of her family's name. In her final days, when even her closest friends had stopped visiting, she noticed him, the man others ignored. The walls of wealth and prejudice that had always kept them apart were starting to crack. Something was about to happen, something that would test the boundaries of compassion, sacrifice, and the raw humanity often hidden beneath layers of inequality. Because sometimes, the people we least expect become the ones who carry us through the darkest nights. And sometimes, it takes tragedy to reveal who we really are. The mansion's walls had always kept the world out, but in those 7 days, they began to feel like a prison. The daughter's condition worsened with every passing hour. Machines hummed, monitors beeped, and her mother sat at her bedside, clutching her hand as though holding her tightly enough could anchor her to life. Doctors came and went, speaking in hushed tones, delivering updates that sounded more like countdowns than hope. Every visit left her mother more shattered. The girl's once bright eyes dulled, her laughter silenced by weakness. She was slipping away. And in the background, unnoticed by most, the janitor continued his quiet work. He polished floors no one cared to see, collected discarded cups left behind by restless nurses, and empty bins overflowing with medical gloves and tissues. But more than anyone, he saw the girl. He noticed the way she tried to smile for her mother, even when pain made it nearly impossible. He saw how her friends stopped visiting once her illness became too heavy for them to bear. And he saw the mother's desperation harden into anger, not at her daughter, but at the cruel unfairness of it all. Still, his presence was treated like an inconvenience. Security guards eyed him as if he were trespassing, nurses avoided his gaze, and even other staff whispered behind his back. His skin was enough for them to believe he didn't belong. He wasn't one of them, no matter how many nights he worked to keep their halls spotless. One afternoon, when he paused to empty the trash in the hospital-like wing of the mansion, he overheard a conversation that made his chest tighten. The mother was speaking sharply to a visiting relative. "She's dying," the woman said, her voice breaking. "And no one can help. Not the doctors, not the treatments. What am I supposed to do? Watch her fade away?" The relative sighed. "There's nothing left to try. You have to accept it." "Accept it?" The mother's voice turned sharp. "I refuse. There must be something. Someone. Anything." The janitor froze outside the door, gripping the trash bag in his hand. He wanted to step forward, to say something, but he knew his place. His words would never carry weight in that world. He was invisible, until the moment they needed someone to blame. Days passed. The girl's breaths grew shallower. Hope slipped further from the mother's grasp. And with each moment, the household tension boiled higher. Staff were on edge, afraid of making mistakes under the mother's watchful, grieving eye. Some whispered that once the daughter was gone, jobs would be lost, lives disrupted. The janitor carried that weight too, but more than anything, he carried the weight of injustice. He saw how people looked at him, like he was less, like his existence was an intrusion. He had been denied jobs more fitting his skill, turned away from opportunities, reduced to scrubbing floors for the wealthy because society had decided the color of his skin defined his worth. And yet, in that house filled with sorrow, he became the one constant presence near the girl. While others drifted away, he stayed. He adjusted her pillows when no one noticed, brought her fresh water without being asked, and sometimes, when the night stretched long and lonely, she would meet his eyes and whisper a silent thank you with the faintest of smiles. But even compassion could not go unnoticed for long. One evening, as he carefully straightened her blanket, the mother entered the room. Her eyes, red from crying, hardened when they fell on him. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. His hands froze. He lowered his gaze, as he always did, and murmured, "Just making her comfortable." "She doesn't need you," the mother said coldly. "You're here to clean, not to." She stopped herself, her voice cracking with exhaustion, but the damage was done. Her words cut deep, confirming what he already knew. In her eyes, he was just the help. Nothing more. He wanted to leave, to walk away from the sting of her dismissal. But when he glanced at the girl, lying pale and fragile on the bed, he saw her watching him with a softness her mother didn't possess. That look rooted him to the spot. He nodded silently and backed away, but he didn't leave her side completely. The days blurred together, each one darker than the last. On the 6th day, the girl's breathing became ragged. Nurses rushed in, alarms blared, and her mother collapsed into sobs. Amid the chaos, the janitor stood in the corner, unseen, his heart pounding. He knew this might be her last night. And then it happened. The power flickered. Lights dimmed. Machines faltered. Panic spread through the household. The backup generator struggled to kick in. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the girl's fragile thread of life would snap, not from her illness, but from failure. The staff scrambled, shouting orders, but no one moved fast enough. And in that instant, it was the janitor, the man nobody trusted, the man whose worth they dismissed, who acted. He knew the building systems better than anyone. While others hesitated, he sprinted to the basement, navigating the maze of pipes and wires. Sweat poured down his face as he worked frantically, his hands steady despite the pounding of his heart. Above, the monitors wailed. The mother cried out, begging anyone to save her daughter. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, with a crack and a surge, the power roared back to life. Machines steadied. The girl's weak pulse returned on the screen. The household erupted in relief, but no one cheered for the man who had made it possible. No one asked who had saved those precious seconds. When the janitor returned upstairs, covered in dust and sweat, the mother barely looked at him. Instead, she clutched her daughter's hand, whispering prayers of gratitude, not to him, but to fate. He stood silently in the doorway, the weight of invisibility pressing down harder than ever. He had just saved the girl's life, if only for a few more hours, yet he remained a shadow in their story. But something had shifted. The girl, her strength fading, met his eyes and mouthed the words her mother hadn't, "Thank you." And in that fragile moment, he realized something. Sometimes the most powerful truths are seen only by those who have nothing left to lose. What came next would test not only his courage but the very core of what it meant to fight injustice. Because prejudice doesn't vanish in gratitude, it often grows sharper when confronted with truth. And soon, the world within that mansion would show just how cruelly it could turn against the man who dared to care. The final day arrived like a storm. The seventh day. The girl's body was weak, her breath shallow, her pulse fragile. Doctors circled like shadows, offering only grim silence. Her mother, exhausted beyond recognition, clung to her hand as if love alone could anchor her daughter to this world. The mansion, once alive with luxury and pride, felt like a tomb. Curtains stayed drawn, staff whispered, and every sound was swallowed by the weight of grief. And yet, in the middle of that suffocating silence, injustice found its sharpest edge. Rumors had begun to swirl among the household staff, ugly, poisonous whispers that the janitor had crossed a line. Some claimed he had lingered too long by the girl's bedside. Others said he had dared to act too familiar, stepping beyond the boundaries of his position. What began as murmurs grew into accusations, fueled by prejudice. His compassion, his quiet presence in her darkest hours, was twisted into suspicion. By midday, the tension snapped. The mother, raw with grief and fear, walked into her daughter's room to find him adjusting the blankets again. Her voice, hoarse and sharp, lashed out. "What are you doing here? I told you before, stay away." The words landed like a whip. He froze, his heart thundering, his hands still gentle on the blanket. He wanted to explain, to remind her that the girl herself had welcomed his presence, but the mother's fury drowned out reason. "You think you can take advantage of her kindness," she accused, her grief twisting into rage. "You don't belong here. You've never belonged here." Her voice carried through the hallways. Staff gathered, watching from the shadows. Their eyes did not hold sympathy, they held judgment. Some nodded, eager to align themselves with power. Others stayed silent, too afraid to challenge the authority that dismissed him as less than human. And then, the worst blow of all, security was called. 2 guards entered the room, their presence heavy and threatening. "Escort him out," the mother ordered, her voice trembling with anger. The janitor's heart pounded. He had done nothing wrong. He had given his time, his compassion, his quiet acts of care. He had even saved the girl's life when the power failed. Yet here he was, treated like a criminal, thrown out for the crime of existing where they believed he didn't belong. As the guards moved closer, the girl stirred. With what little strength she had left, she reached for him. Her hand, weak and trembling, lifted slightly from the bed. Her lips parted, whispering words too faint for most to hear. But he saw them. He understood. "Stay." It was the only plea she could give. Her eyes, filled with pain yet shimmering with something purer, locked onto his. Gratitude. Trust. Humanity. In her gaze, he was not the help. He was not defined by the color of his skin. He was simply the one who cared when no one else would. But the guards didn't see her plea. They grabbed his arm, yanking him back. His chest tightened as he struggled, not violently, but desperately, trying to explain. "She needs me. Please." The mother turned away, unable to bear what she believed to be intrusion. The staff whispered, their prejudice louder than truth. And then, it happened. The girl's monitors screamed. Her fragile body convulsed, alarms blaring as doctors rushed in. The room descended into chaos. Nurses pushed past the guards, shouting orders. The mother screamed her daughter's name, collapsing beside the bed. In the chaos, the janitor broke free. He rushed forward, not to defy, not to claim, but to save. His hands, steady despite his racing heart, adjusted the oxygen mask, steadied the monitors, and cleared the blockage that had nearly silenced her forever. For a moment, life returned. The monitors steadied. The girl's pulse, faint but present, blinked on the screen again. The room fell into stunned silence. The mother turned, her tear-streaked face a mask of disbelief. She saw him, not as the janitor, not as the man she dismissed, but as the one who had saved her daughter twice. The guards released him, shame flickering in their eyes. The staff, once quick to judge, stood frozen. The truth was undeniable. But the damage was already done. He had been humiliated, accused, treated as less than human in the very moment he was giving the most of his humanity. He stood there, chest heaving, dust and sweat clinging to him. His eyes met the mother's, not with anger, but with a quiet, piercing question, "Do you see me now?" The girl, too weak to speak, lifted her hand again. This time, her mother saw it. She followed her daughter's trembling gaze, her tear-streaked eyes finally settling on the man she had tried to cast out. And in that moment, the weight of truth came crashing down. All the wealth, all the power, all the walls she had built to separate herself from people like him, none of it had saved her daughter. It was the man she had dismissed, insulted, and nearly destroyed who had stood firm when everyone else had faltered. Her tears returned, not just of grief, but of shame. The janitor turned to leave, his dignity intact despite the humiliation. But just as he stepped through the doorway, the girl's monitor beeped again. A sharp, shrill sound that pierced the air. The room erupted into chaos once more. Doctors shouting. Nurses rushing. The mother screaming her daughter's name. And the janitor stopped in his tracks. His body trembled, torn between walking away from the pain of prejudice and stepping back into the fire one more time. Because sometimes, the cruelest injustice is not in being hated, it's in being needed, but never valued. And in that suspended moment, the question hung heavy in the air, would this be the last time he could save her? Or would the weight of a world built on prejudice finally crush them both? The girl's life hung by a thread that night, but for a few fleeting hours, she remained in this world. The janitor's quick hands and steady resolve had bought her time, time her family could never repay. Time her mother would never forget. But time is merciless. By morning, her fragile body gave in. Her final breath slipped into silence, her pulse fading into eternity. The monitors stilled. The house, once filled with panic and chaos, now stood in suffocating quiet. Her mother collapsed in grief, clutching her daughter's still hand. Tears poured freely, not just for the daughter she lost but for the truth she could no longer deny. For 7 days, she had lived in desperation. And in those 7 days, it wasn't wealth, influence, or privilege that held her together. It was the presence of the very man she had dismissed, insulted, and nearly cast aside. For the first time, she looked at him, really looked. Not as a janitor. Not as the help. Not through the filter of prejudice. She saw him as a man. A man who carried humanity when everyone else faltered. A man who gave dignity in the face of humiliation. A man who reminded her, painfully and beautifully, that compassion has no color. The staff, too, could no longer deny what they had witnessed. Their whispers, their judgments, their cruel assumptions, all shattered by the truth that had unfolded before their eyes. Some lowered their heads in shame, others avoided his gaze. The silence of guilt filled the mansion more heavily than grief itself. For the janitor, there was no triumph in this moment. No satisfaction in proving them wrong. Only exhaustion. He had carried the weight of being unseen for so long, and even now, Even after saving what little life could be saved, the question haunted him, would he ever be valued for who he was, and not reduced to the color of his skin? He walked away from the mansion not with pride, but with a quiet dignity. His footsteps echoed in the corridors, heavy yet steady. For once, the mother did not stop him. She didn't order him out. She didn't call for guards. She simply watched, tears falling, knowing she had lost more than a daughter that day. She had lost her illusions, her walls, her blindness. The girl's death was a tragedy. But her final days revealed a truth the world often refuses to see: racism doesn't just wound in moments of violence. It steals dignity in silence. It crushes compassion in the shadows. It tells people they don't belong, even when they are the ones carrying others through their darkest hours. The janitor returned to his life, scarred but unbroken. The memories of those 7 days followed him, her pale smile, her whispered plea for him to stay, her mother's tears when truth finally broke through. He carried those moments like invisible scars. Not all wounds bleed. Some just burn quietly, reminding us every day of what we've survived. And for the mother, the impact was deeper still. She would never be the same. Her wealth, once her shield, now felt hollow. Every time she passed through the polished halls of her mansion, she remembered the man who had walked them humbly, carrying more humanity than she had ever known. Her daughter's last days taught her a lesson no fortune could buy, that true worth is not measured by status, but by compassion. This was more than the story of one girl, one mother, one man. It was the story of countless lives lived in the shadow of prejudice. The story of how racism doesn't just deny opportunity, it denies recognition of humanity. It strips dignity from those who deserve it most. And yet, even in the face of injustice, there are those who continue to give, to care, to rise above hate with an unshakable strength. The question is not whether this story matters. The question is, how many more times must it be told before the world listens? How many more mothers must weep before they realize compassion has no race? How many more lives must be cut short before dignity is recognized as a human right, not a privilege? How many more quiet acts of courage must go unseen before we choose to see them? The girl is gone. The janitor walks on. The mansion returns to silence. But the story doesn't end there. It lives on, in every injustice, every prejudice, every moment where humanity is overlooked because of the color of a person's skin. And it asks each of us a question we cannot ignore. When the moment comes, will we be the ones who turn away? Or will we be the ones who stay, who choose compassion over hate, humanity over prejudice, truth over silence? Because in the end, the measure of who we are is not written in wealth, power, or status. It is written in the way we treat those the world tries to erase. And that is a truth no one can afford to forget.